Here's something that might surprise you. While most industries are still debating whether to adopt AI, the trucking industry is already using artificial intelligence to save lives, reduce insurance costs, and solve their biggest talent challenges. And the companies that aren't, they're getting left behind fast. Welcome to I Want to Work For You podcast. Our host, Emily Alvarez, will be talking with Merryl Gerhardt, who spent over 20 years in trucking recruitment and has expanded into insurance analytics to help fleet owners navigate this rapidly changing landscape. From AI-powered dash cams that can prevent lawsuits to predictive technology that's revolutionizing route planning, Merrill's going to break down exactly how smart trucking companies are using technology not to replace their drivers, but to empower them. Plus, we'll talk about why the human element in recruiting is more important than ever. Ready to learn what the future of trucking really looks like? Here we go.
Well, thank you for joining us today on another episode of I Want to Work For You. I am your host, Emily Alvarez, and I'm very excited to be joined by my friend Merrill Gerhardt today. He is the president and founder of ATG Recruiting, American Trucking Group, Hello Retention, and Hello Logistics Insurance, joining us all the way from beautiful Georgia. And I'm very excited to have you today with us on the show, Merle. Welcome. And why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Hey, appreciate you having me on, Emily. Again, as everybody knows, my name is Merrill Gerhardt, president of American Trucking Group. We kind of started out in the recruiting space a little over 10 years ago and expanded into the retention space a little over 2 years ago. And about a year ago, found there was a niche and need to educate truck drivers, especially owner operators, on the insurance space. Insurance seems like one of those things where you just have to go buy something and get what you get. But if truck
Right.
drivers don't understand the what goes into giving them the policy premiums and how they can protect themselves, it makes it a little more difficult for them. So we just kind of went into that role naturally, due to a client that we had and needing insurance, and his insurance kept skyrocketing. So we started digging in, looking at his employees, his operation, and helped him streamline that a little better, and ultimately saved him money by making some minor changes he wasn't even aware about. So we're in a little bit of all the spaces.
Yeah, I love that. At 20, over 2 decades of experience in this, I mean, you're a total powerhouse. And I love that you identified that need because obviously insurance, and we'll get into this, is one of those areas that can fluctuate quite a bit, right? And it's not always a moving target. And so it's always a moving target, I should say. And so we have to like constantly be looking at these rates and what's going on. And so I love that you identified that. And so we're going to get into that in this show today. And so really the purpose of this, and thanks again for doing this, is really to talk about trucking talent, insurance, technology as we step into 2026, and really all things safety leadership, logistics management, really what we're doing going forward in 2026 in the trucking industry. And then we'll talk about what we're doing as far as some community groups, right? Because we have that coming up as well in this month. So we'll get into what we're doing as far as community action is concerned to get people engaged in this topic. So we'll get into kind of what the state of the trucking industry is today, Merrill. So as far as your experience going into 2026, because as we all know, we've got a lot going on just in the country right now, and a lot going on with international, with tariffs, with prices, with insurance. There's a lot of different things that affect this industry specifically. So what challenges are you currently kind of hearing from the fleets right now when it comes to finding talent, keeping talent, driver turnover? What's kind of been the ear to the ground in the industry right now?
Oh, that's a fully loaded question. If
I
you
know.
watch YouTube, the news every morning,
Right,
the FMCSA and the new secretary over there is digging in deep to figure out how to make trucking better, or as Donald Trump says, how to make America great again or trucking great again. That
right.
seems to be the theme, and companies are looking at how do they make their companies better or great, but there's a lot of uncertainty too. Moving into the end of 2025, and trucking companies are still looking for qualified drivers, but they're tightening up their hiring requirements when it comes to regards to the number of jobs or accidents. All these things play into bottom line and cost. So there's been a lot of shift in looking at a better quality candidate and driver. There's been a lot of talk about non-domicile CDLs where people come from a foreign country, they get their CDLs and then they never leave.
Right.
And how just in the freight brokerage area, there's a lot of scamming type things going on. So from moving into 2026, I've seen that anybody that's experienced truck driver, they're staying put because they're unsure of the market, the tariffs, what's going on all around the world, and they're kind
Right.
of scared to make a job shift. If they're somewhat happy where they're at, they're staying. If they're not, they ultimately end up leaving. But a lot of times we find on the recruiting side, we're talking to a lot of drivers that are just coming out of truck driving school trying to find their first job, but not a lot of carriers have openings for what they call recent grads. They need those experienced drivers, not the
Sure.
inexperienced drivers. Um, there's just a lot of things going on in the trucking world, but I feel 2026 will be more optimistic um, with manufacturing coming back to the U.S. There's a lot of shifting in operations, and companies are merging, being bought out. Let's see, I think Dart just got bought out this past week by a holding company. Hogan Transport got bought out. Abilene Truck Line just got bought out by Swift.
Right.
Um, CFI just was a separate company under PAM Transport. Now they're merging as one company. The buyouts is one thing, but when you start seeing companies kind of merge under one umbrella, so they're not having to operate as two sole entities, that helps in the transportation space because now instead of running two separate companies, you're running one company. All the drivers are in that pool. There may be a little bit of a dysfunction for these drivers trying to understand the new company's way of doing business,
Sure.
but it leverages a lot more power for the company and the driver when it comes to loads, freight, other opportunities that they may have only had being with one company, but now they're part of two that have combined. So a good example would be I was in an over-road company, and the company that I'm being absorbed into, they also have regional or local positions. So they may have that opportunity to shift into those positions as they come available versus hiring somebody from outside the company. So
Right.
there's some good things with it. There's probably some flaws that come into the place, but you never know how it shakes out. But I think overall, 2026 is going to be a little bit more positive than the last few years have been in the transportation industry.
Sure. And that sounds promising. It sounds like, I mean, historically, I think humans in general, we have a hard time with change, right? And so
Mhm.
when companies tend to get bought out or there's a merger that takes place or an acquisition, sometimes the company that gets acquired or is the merger that is the smaller of the two companies that gets, merged into the other one. Sometimes the people that are in that smaller company are the ones that struggle a little bit more, right? Because they have to adapt more to the policies of the bigger company. I've been through this multiple times in my own career in different industries, and so it can be a challenge, right? If you're not opening yourself up to the possibility of positivity within that change. And so I think that that's pretty typical. But it sounds promising if you're looking at it from the perspective of, wow, this is actually opening up more opportunities for me. Have you seen this affect pay and benefit demands or expectations within companies at all with these truck drivers that have gone into these companies? Are they when they get acquired or they have they go into these companies that have merged, are they now asking for more compensation, more benefits as a result of this? How is this affecting employers?
It's a flip. It affects employees in a number of different aspects. As far as when you look at it from the truck driver standpoint, and that's where everything really starts at. Because I remember a CEO of a company telling his people that you got your dispatching, you got your HR, you got your safety, you have all these different people that are they're overhead. Essentially, they're just overhead.
Sure.
And he tells them, he goes, if we don't have the driver out there and the truck out there and the freight, they don't need any of us in this office. They're the ones that make the wheels turn. They're the ones that get the loads to where they're supposed to be. And that puts a truck driver in a very unique position, especially when it comes to being merged or acquisitions into a different company. The freight is still there from the original company. The freight's still there from the company that just absorbed them. So
Sure.
losing a job is not necessarily the thing. But pay may shift. It may go up. It may go down a little bit, but there may be, depending on how they restructure and what they're contracting, what they're hauling, and things like that. So a driver has to look at that part. But typically, it kind of stays the same until they kind of settle the dust and see what's going on. Where you're going to see the shift and changes are going to be in the dispatching, the HR. You don't need two HRs. You don't need two presidents. You don't need two vice
Exactly.
presidents. You
Yeah,
don't need two of everybody, but you do still
exactly.
need that truck driver. Um, and depending on the situation or circumstances, the truck driver may be moving into a situation where company that bought them actually has a better medical plan, a better vacation or PTO plan, or some other wellness type things, especially if they're a smaller outfit getting absorbed by a bigger outfit. So
Right.
there's some positives to that, and they just have to figure out what those are and ride the wave in the transition until it settles out. There's still a value to the organization. They're important to making the organization great, but also it helps us get what we need delivered to our front doors every single day. They're a
Yeah, I think
valuable asset.
yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's a cycle, right? If the drivers are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and of course it makes sense to eliminate double positioning, right? That's happened in companies I've been at where they've had two of, and they have to either absorb one and kind of demote, or they get rid of, right? And so that's pretty typical. But yeah, I think it sounds like it's more beneficial. It's just like I said, that change is not always easy for some people, or they get stuck in their way of doing things, and so they tend to maybe think, oh, I don't want to change. But then maybe if you just look past that initial, fear, it's
Mhm.
actually better, right? So for trucking recruiters and owners, kind of on the flip side of this, for them, what kind of tactics are helping them attract and retain new drivers? Because I would imagine if they're merging, right, or if companies are there's a lot of this going on, and it's not just in trucking, it's actually happening in skilled trade too right now, where like companies are buying up private equity companies are buying up, right? This is actually a pretty common thing that's happening in some other industries. But what this would to me mean they need to hire more, right? If they're getting more jobs in, especially if they are advancing in the technology space, which allows them to be more efficient and effective, which we'll talk about as we get into the AI part of this conversation. But
Mhm.
what kind of practical tactics are they using now to attract these top talent? Because one thing you did mention to me in another conversation too is that these talent are expected to actually be better than just your average normal drivers now, too, right? So what are they
Right.
doing to kind of attract these people?
They're looking for the best of the best.
Yeah,
And the key is when it comes to a truck driver as a whole, of course, in the dispatching and other things like that, they want people who have maybe been in the truck before, instead
right.
of somebody that's coming out of college doesn't know what a truck looks like, and they're telling drivers where to pick up loads and drop loads. One of the tactics that several companies do is, all right, I have a great truck driver out there and he's been on the road for a couple years. He picks up his loads on time. He delivers on time. He's my go-to person to get loads done, so I know they're going to get done. And in the trucking space, the market's very competitive.
Yeah,
If they're hauling for Walmart or whoever it is, they look at their on-time rate, and you can lose a contract by a quarter of a percent to somebody else because
right.
you weren't on time with that freight. So when it comes to attracting the talent, sometimes they're looking within. And when they're looking to if they have a dispatching position or a driver manager or a fleet manager position that comes open, they're probably looking at the drivers that have been out there on the road and giving them that opportunity to, hey, I know you've been a driver with us. How about coming off the road, getting a stable home time and coming into the office and being our dispatcher, fleet manager, driver manager, et cetera? Because there's a different persona to that when that driver's been doing that and now
Mhm.
he's in the seat telling somebody else how to do that same job versus somebody that's never done it before. we find that in our surveys and talking with companies that a driver that was a dispatcher that was a former driver or fleet manager that used to be a driver within the company, the drivers that they're giving instruction and having conversation with have much more respect because they understand what it's like to be on the road away from home for a week, 2 weeks, 3, 4 weeks at a time. They understand the challenges of getting to shippers that are hard, um, big cities and trying to navigate to those warehouses.
Sure.
So they look a lot of times within and look at who they have as the best talent pool to promote them within and bring them in. If they're a smaller operation, they may be looking for that same driver, but they might have applied for a trucking job, but they're looking at it and says, "Hey, I have a need or a niche that I need filled. Do you think you might be interested in doing that?" And that's how people move up into the organization,
Yes.
from being a truck driver to, in some cases, are now presidents of the company.
Right. That is so smart. And we used to, I mean, Ryan, our CEO, and we used to do that at Applicant Pro with our sales team. We used to make everybody start in support. And the reason we did that was because you have to understand how to talk to clients and how their experience is, and if they're going to call and yell at you, if they're going to call and be happy with you, if they're going to call and give you feedback, whether that's positive or negative or whatever the case may be, you have to be able to understand. You have to be able to empathize. You have to be able to connect, right? And work through these situations. You develop a respect, right? That you maybe wouldn't have for your CX team, or you maybe wouldn't have for your clients, or you maybe wouldn't have your product team had you not done that stint in support, right? And so it's very smart to do that, to always cross train your people. You had also said that drivers now, interestingly, are also expected to kind of know how to do basic like warehouse functionality, like being able to unload things in a certain way, to be careful to avoid, any kind of shrinkage of product or any kind of damages or loss prevention. There's a higher bar now. And I think we're seeing that as a culture, maybe a cultural shift, that if you want these jobs, you need to you need to be at a higher bar. So talk a little bit about that, because I think that's where I'm going. You know exactly where I'm going with
Yeah.
this. Yeah. So let's
Yes.
talk about that.
When you're in that position of touching product, freight, etc.,
Right.
there's a lot more care that has to be taken care of in that situation. Whether it's a Dollar General account, you're having to offload that freight at $3 or $4 generals a week or whatever the number is, because you're offloading that product, you're getting it to the store, and then you may be in a higher end niche, and maybe appliances that you're moving from one warehouse to another.
Sure.
You're traffic had you late and you don't want to be late for your next load because you're measured by your stats and your statistics, and you get to that next spot and they allow you to help offload some of that product because you care about your on time rate. You care about your profession, that you want to be number one or the best in your industry. There's a lot of different skill sets that are required in driving, other than just driving the truck. Yes, is that one of them? Because you have to be aware of everything that's going on around you when you're running down the road at 65, 70 miles an hour. Because
Sure.
essentially you're in an 80,000 pound bullet. It's a rocket. You can't stop it on a
Exactly.
dime.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot, and that of course affects insurance rates, right? Because all of this is tracked. It's all logged, I would imagine. And this all,
yes,
like, one thing affects the next, right? So we're looking for, if there's that compensation transparency, if there's those pay packages, those benefit packages, you know, um, to attract that top talent, right? That gets kind of, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You have to be a top performer, right? And they're looking more stringently now for these types of people because insurance has gone up, because thing prices have gone up, because it has become more competitive. So it is not just the same thing that we would think of like 20 years ago. I mean, we've all seen the videos of people slinging stuff off of the back of trucks. It is not like that anymore.
No,
It
no, you
is
can see at
not
the
like that.
airport if you look out the window when they're
Right.
taking your luggage out of the
Right.
bottom of the plane.
Right. Yeah, it's not,
No,
that
they
is not
they
what's happening.
the companies are competitive and are being a little more unique and trying to find ways to compensate their drivers. There's a couple of examples is fuel is one of the biggest costs out there.
Oh, yes.
And there's a
Yeah.
company that we work with that measures their drivers' fuel cost. What's their driver's average mile per gallon? And whoever can maintain that highest mile per gallon every quarter is going to win a car. Um, that driver is seeking to win that car. It costs them nothing. They give a car away every quarter. At the end of the year, they give cash bonus money out. There's other companies out there that are throwing things out as if you are on time deliveries, you don't have any safety inspections that you failed. They're giving an override in pay as far as whether it's cent per mile or a flat rate
Right.
for those drivers at the end of the month. There's another company out there, and I think a lot of companies do this, but some use it differently in these bonus tools. For every time you have a good safety inspection because you did your pre-trip, your post-trip, and all the things you were supposed to do right, and you got a clean safety inspection by going through a DOT weigh station, they're paying them an extra $150 on their next paycheck because they're looking after the company's equipment, making sure they're being safe, making sure everything that they're supposed to do, they're doing right because a negative ding on a safety inspection not only hurts the driver, but it also hurts the company on their scoring and rating when it comes to insurance.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it makes total sense. And let's talk about the insurance side of this because I think this is a good segue into that piece about the risk in 2026, what has changed in insurance. Because it's still one of the biggest line item expenses for fleets. It always will be, right? There's no changing that. I think even as drivers of vehicles, it's one of the biggest line item expenses for most humans that drive cars. It just is.
Mhm.
What's the difference now with like the data, the tech, like what's changed with insurance and tech and the premiums that have changed? Because I was looking, you sent me a great publication in Freight Waves, which is a great resource for finding out what's really going on in the trucking industry. Thank you for sharing that with me. I was reading an article in there that like nearly 45% across trucking over the last decade due to inflation, litigation, and distracted driving measures have caused premiums to just explode. Among a number of other things like, the GPS, the dash cams, like the actual technology tracking of things. It used to be like they would log in the book, right? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, now they have
now,
computers, they log
right,
it. All
right.
right, I'm
Now
going on
it's
my
all
10-hour break. I'm here. Whatever the
right.
case is, they've got a series of duty positions that they have to make sure
Sure.
they're accounting for correctly so they can log their correct hours.
Yeah,
Technology in the truck, there's so much now. I remember when dash cams came out and companies were putting dash cams in the trucks, and a lot of drivers would call, especially on the recruiting side, says, "I don't want no dash cam facing me." Well,
sure.
they're there to help you, but they
Yes,
just had this stigma of, well, I'm betting somebody could be spying on me, Big Brother, that sort of thing. The dash cams and technology has changed a lot over the years, and they're just changing even faster. Yes, they're outward. A lot of companies are now using outward facing cameras. There are inward facing, but they're more AI driven, not actually somebody's watching you, Big Brother, if you
sure.
will.
Yeah.
It can recognize if you're drowsy, it'll have an audible alert. It can recognize that you both hands are not on the steering wheel. And it alerts you and it gives you time to make that corrective action. Not only with that, if you're speeding, wherever it is. They know what the posted speed limit is because if you pull up your Google map or GPS and going down the road, it says it's 55
Does
miles
the
an
same
hour.
thing. Yeah.
It does the same thing. So maybe you're not paying attention. Driving is a very can be exhausting job for when you're driving for hours and hours. And you're using a lot of mental energy and capacity because you're watching left, right. You can't really see the rear because you got a big
Well, and
trailer
the eye
behind you.
movement constantly can create that REM, that
Hmm.
rapid eye movement effect too, which people don't really understand, is that back and forth. If you're constantly checking like this, it actually can create that movement in your eyes, which is what REM
Exactly.
make you drowsy, right?
Yeah, makes you drowsy. You got to take those breaks, but those there's technology in the truck that helps you. Even in newer cars, you'll see the little light show up in your mirror, um, that there's a car in your blind spot. There's my power just went off.
Oh, uh-oh.
I'm still connected, but hey, we're working. I don't know what happened. Um, but it's the same in the trucks. They have those sensors there. They let you
Sure.
know that there's somebody in your blind spot, because the last thing you want to do is put your right turn signal on and try to get over, and there's a car sitting there.
Yeah.
There's speed mitigation. There's all sorts of things. If a car comes on to the on ramp and you're in the right lane and you're making room for them, but then they slow down. The trucks have deceleration so that you can keep the proper distance. But at the same time, it helps the driver. But the driver has to also be in control at the same time and make the right conscious decision of what his next action is if he was going to get into a particular situation. They got to be forward thinking and looking forward to what could be possibly a reaction up there. Um,
Right.
these and same with your personal vehicles. They allow you to put these little doggles in there that measure how fast you're going. Are you speeding, erratic driving? They're just looking for safe driving. And if you are a safe driver, you're going to see that your insurance premiums are going to be less than anybody else if you're willing to let them connect and get the analytics off of what you're doing. And for trucking companies, that analytics is a coaching and training moment. Maybe they
Yeah.
had some bad habits and somebody said this is okay, but in theory, it's not okay. So they need to
Right.
be coached and instructed on how to be a better driver.
Sure. Great points. Yeah, I think, well, and to me, it's really no different than the technology that's in a Tesla, right? I mean, Tesla is the same thing. You have to have your hands on the wheel and it has to be able to detect your eyes looking forward, right? Other than that, the car does the work, right? If it's on
Hmm.
self-drive. So it's kind of the same thing, but it still will alert you if stuff is you're not doing something or it'll correct or whatever. I would assume it's kind of the same vibe of the technology to an extent. Only you're in a much larger, vehicle, obviously a lot bigger mode of transportation. But I think you're absolutely right. It's the same thing as like body cameras. It's like if you're having these, they're actually to help you because it will help in training moments. It'll help in moments to clear a situation, to provide feedback or support of you in a situation that you were following whatever it is you're supposed to do. But with truck drivers, I mean, I think you're right. Teachable moments are very important, especially if a truck driver owner, in this case, we're talking about insurance, and nearly 45% of trucking companies having to face premiums going through the roof because of this, it would only stand to reason that we don't want drivers cutting corners, especially when there's safety involved, right? And
Exactly.
so, yeah. So, I mean, so what do these safety officers and owners like? What do they really need to know about using this tech to pay less for better insurance? Like, what are some examples of leveraging this AI and tech to improve these safety scores? Because I believe obviously AI is the future in these types of scenarios, and I know you're in that bucket. We believe this tech will help rather than hinder in most
Mhm.
ways. How do you think AI and this the telematics will help with insurance premiums going forward with this?
Well, from a trucker standpoint, for cost, because everything costs, and in the transportation or the 18-wheeler for tractor trailer industry, everything's expensive. Just one tire alone could cost you $1,000 just to
Sure.
buy the tire, not put it on and have it balanced or whatever you need to do. I was speaking with a three truck company a couple weeks ago, and the policy sounded good to him. He really liked it, so he took the policy. And then the insurance company came back and says, "Hey, we need to connect your telematics, your ELD data." And it was in the policy, and I reminded him of that, and he hadn't connected it yet. So he was in pending cancellation mode. He's like, "I really don't want nobody knowing what I'm doing." I says, "Are you doing anything wrong?" He's like,
Yeah.
"No." I said, "Well, let's get these people on the phone. Let's have a discussion of how they use that data." And they said they actually don't tell the insurance company until it comes time for renewal. It's not like their big brother telling on you all the time. He says, but when your drivers are on the road, because you're not in the truck with them, are you? If they're doing something that could be a safety related or a coachable or teachable moment, it alerts the owner of the company. He can pick up the phone and have a conversation. Hey, we just got an alert that you were speeding 10 miles over in this zone. We can't be doing that because that's going to be an impactful thing for you as a driver. And for the owner, you don't want to replace drivers all the time. He's
Yeah,
had this driver for several years, but it helped him bring his by just putting that in his truck. The insurance company gave him a $5,000 deduction in his annual premium by putting it in there. If his drivers do everything they're supposed to do, when it comes time for renewal, his renewal should be going down instead of going up if his
yeah,
drivers are doing everything they're supposed to be doing. So it's there to help. People feel like it's Big Brother, but I mean, in the world we live in, the technology, we have technology everywhere.
right.
And yeah, you need to utilize it to be better and not feel like you're tattletelling. It's teachable, coachable training moments. And
Sure.
some people need to, once they grasp that, they get it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's a reframing, right? It's a culture. And we see this, and I know you've been in these conversations with me and Ryan and a number of us, that when it comes to technology and companies specifically, it's like a 85 to 90% tech or a human problem and like 15 to 10% tech problem, right? Most of the time, it's that the employees don't really understand why the tech is there, or they don't really understand the purpose behind what that tech is reporting or what those numbers or metrics are going to be used for. There's like a lack of clarity or collaboration behind these things. And so, if the culture of the company isn't clear, if there isn't clarity around goals and around um, usage of KPIs and metrics and different things like that, like expectations, then it can feel invasive or intrusive because people are like, well, are they spying on me? Or like we as humans psychologically automatically jump to the worst case scenario because that's how we are wired, right? We're in a society right now where everything is the extreme. So it's either
Uh-huh.
Big Brother is watching us or, they don't care at all, right? There's no in between. But the in between is really like, hey, we want to do this because the reality of the situation is if we're not safe, it costs the company tons of money, not to mention you could really hurt or kill somebody and
Mhm.
or you could like there's all these things that could happen that have nothing to do with spying on you and or not caring, right? So that's like the furthest from the truth. But I think when we get into AI specifically and we get into these technologies, it becomes our responsibility as leadership to really frame for our people why these things exist, why they're put in place. And hey, if I'm the owner and I call you and I say, hey, you're going 10 miles per hour over the speed limit on I-15, knock it off. I'm not calling to spy on you. I'm calling because I want to keep you and everybody else around you safe, right? So I think that's the reframing that has to happen, right? In a sense. So Merrill, let's talk about AI a little bit. What's now versus sort of what's next? A lot of people are hearing about AI right now in just the regular space and are thinking AI more in the way of like science fiction or that this is kind of not a real technology that would be befitting into the trucking industry. But right now, within trucking and practical benefits, so Merrill, kind of jumping into the next part of this as we're going through the technology side of this. Talking about AI, because obviously, my background mostly is in AI and technology for companies to solve, their needs as far as efficiency and effectiveness. And so we hear a lot of folks now say that, AI is sci-fi tech, It's not, the next new thing. They're kind of hesitant around it. I think a little bit less coming into 2026 because they're starting to see the impact of this a little bit more feverishly now.
Yeah.
But what practical benefits are happening today around AIs, besides um, being able to report into like what drivers are doing and things like that? Let's talk a little bit about how these telematics and AI are reducing risk, the route efficiencies. Like there's a lot of other things in here that AI can do with data, right? And so let's talk a little bit about that. What are we seeing kind of from a practical benefit standpoint with technology and AI that maybe wasn't there even 2 years ago?
Oh shoot. AI from safety standpoint, it's helped reduce safety,
Sure.
especially with the stuff in the trucks. I think from the operational side, um, using AI, having that tool now versus 2 years ago, it allows the operational department to look at their process and procedures and dump it into something instead of having 15 brains think about it.
Sure.
The AI takes the place of those 15 brains, can quickly calculate it and put those analytics and data together and give it an output of some recommendations. It doesn't tell you you have to do these things. It's just saying, hey, these are things you should be thinking about because the artificial intelligence is gathering information from all over the world, all sorts of data places, picking up data points that if we were to sit down and do it manually and trying to calculate, all right, I have this truck doing this amount of miles per gallon, this truck doing this. You can take all that data very quickly, and the idea of spreadsheets, it was my my masterpiece, and now AI can do those things in a matter of seconds. What used to take me days or hours of trying to figure out how to study data points and see where we can make things more efficient. And from the
Right.
operational standpoint, AI helps do that in a much faster rate than me trying to figure it out as an individual. And when it comes to route planning, they may say, well, Google says this is the best route, but they have to factor in, other things, truck weight, weigh stations, um, fueling locations.
Right.
AI can kind of help them mitigate some of those things and maybe find a more efficient way of doing things for the driver and cost savings for the company. It doesn't replace the human by any means. It just helps us as humans operate a little bit more efficiently at a faster rate than we were able to operate before.
Right. Yeah. And great points. And I think too, from just a predictive maintenance standpoint, like system-wide maintenance, predictive, slashing downtime, unplanned costs. There's things that can be predicted based on unforeseen events or circumstances that AI can
Mhm.
predict. Because what a lot of people's misconception is with AI is that it's like Google. It's not. It's
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 not at
not.
all.
What it's trained to do is look for patterns, right? But you have to be able to tell it what to look for, which is where, to your point, the human comes in, right? The human is the director of the symphony. AI is like having every instrument known to man that's ever been created in the orchestra. But
Hmm.
you, as the conductor, has to know which instrument to pick at which given time to direct it to tell you to tell it when to play that song or that note or whatever. Otherwise, you're going to get feedback from every single instrument in the orchestra and it's just going to sound like a bunch of noise, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think with like practical milestones and aligning AI with existing workflows, not trying to necessarily reinvent the wheel, right? Pun intended. Um, but trying to take existing workflows, to your point, spreadsheets that would take you days, weeks to put all of this data together and look at all of these, P&L reports and different things and insurance costs and trying to look for the patterns yourself or trying to dig through all this data. AI, you can dump those spreadsheets in and say, here, put together my P&L statements for the last, year, and
Absolutely.
it'll do it for you. And you don't,
I,
it
I
takes like an
guess
hour. you know?
Well, I think, when people are used to using Google in the past to look for things, shop for things, and see what's
Right.
out there. But in what I like about AI, it's unfiltered. I feel it's honest and it's not trying to sell me something.
Yes. Yeah.
Where Google, all these other type of platforms, they're there for revenue. You want to be on page one. You get all this ads on the side. And what AI does is, and a great example of this is my daughter was looking for a vacuum cleaner. Out of all things, she's using
Yeah.
Chat GPT and AI to do this. Hey, I have this type of vacuum cleaner. I've had it for 5 years. It just died. What are my options? Call manufacturer, do this. And then she ultimately ended up getting a better version of that same type vacuum cleaner because there was it somehow people were asking enough questions and knew this vacuum cleaner had a flaw in that type model, but they've
Right.
since fixed it. So she felt comfortable buying that same model, a newer model, and it wasn't like, oh, this is what's showing up is what I should be buying versus what is really practical, and I'm getting the feedback from other people.
Right.
So I like that honesty that comes out of it because it'll tell you, and hey, are you sure you want to do this? I remember you saying before that you did not want to do this, or
Yeah.
you wanted that you wanted this to be a factor when you're looking at these types of situations or calculating this type of data to make your organizational better.
Yeah.
As Ryan said, you always want to be going up and right. You definitely want to go left and down, and it can happen in this industry very quickly if you're not paying attention to those little bitty pieces.
It's very true. And that's one of the benefits of AI is it allows you to look at those little bitty pieces. And those little bitty pieces over time are usually what stack up and make up our blind spots, right? And so that's where we have to pay the most attention. And I think as just as humans in general, we're not always the greatest at looking backward in history to see what maybe we did or logging that. You know, a lot of companies now don't have a traditional like learning and development department or a research and development department where they just have people that are like researching and learning and, trying stuff all day long. Um, and so when you get into these things, it's good to have somebody that can take the reins and start playing around with this stuff to figure out what's going to work best. But you also need a human to look at it and say, you know what, there might be some blind spots here that maybe it didn't see. So yeah, the human element really is not just to let the computer take over or the robot, so to speak, and let it do the work for you. You still have to have that human oversight, especially when you're getting into chatbots and the agentic stuff, because that's where, as you know, it needs coaching, it needs
It
help.
needs guidance,
Yeah, it
and
needs
it needs the
guidance.
guidance to understand
Yes,
what we were looking for and what the desired output is or result
a
that
thousand
we're trying
percent.
to achieve.
Yep, 1,000%. So recruiting in tech, because this is, believe it or not, and I'm sure you know this, this is a hot button issue. Doesn't matter if it's trucking or not. We have a lot of people in recruiting in general that are hesitant about AI, right? They think that this is not something we want in our space, period, end of discussion. But recruiting workflows are being disrupted by AI, right? We know this. You have bots talking to bots in a lot of cases, which is hilarious to me. You have just recruiters and people that are like, we don't want this at all because they think it's going to replace their jobs, and that it's going to just go away. But when it comes to recruiting in tech, I think that it is the new frontier, but it can automate parts of talent acquisition and retention without losing that human touch if it's done correctly, right?
Mm.
So discussion areas for this: chatbots, GPT agents that handle candidates. What's your opinion on recruiting and AI? Where do you kind of fall in this discussion? I'm interested to hear about
I'm
this.
probably still a little more analog compared to some people in
Yeah,
this
and that's
industry,
okay.
um, because of the space that we're in. I look at things from a people to people perspective. Do we use AI and things like that? Sure. I think there's a lot of industries or other industries in recruiting, whether it's tech, medical. They're probably way more advanced to this, but because I'm in the trucking and logistics space, I
Yeah.
think I have more of a passion of being one on one and
Yeah.
being more
Yeah.
analog and human. Sure, through the process and the application, the paperwork stuff, you want to utilize those things. But when you're actually talking to a driver that's looking for a job, I'm still old school. You got to have that one on one conversation. You have to understand why they're looking for a job, why they're leaving their current employer, what happened at their current employer, to see if the next place is going to be better for them or about the same or it meets their needs.
Right.
It may not always be about money. It could be just time off or home time or a better schedule. All those things play into it. I'm sure chatbots can figure all that out for the most part, but for me, understanding and the recruiters on my team for them to understand what the driver's looking for, so we're helping them get to the next place, I think is very key. Everything that happens before they apply or after they apply that are not necessarily in human interaction. I think AI and all those tools are great, but having that initial ongoing conversation is so important because drivers in this industry, and people may or may not know this, there's drivers that are home every day. There's
Yep.
drivers home every other day. There's drivers that are home once a week. There's drivers home every 2 weeks. And there's drivers that are out there for 3 and 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time.
Right.
And guess what? They don't get to talk to people other than by phone. Um, and they're looking out a windshield, looking at this beautiful country and everything that's going on. So that human interaction and them being able to tell their story means more to them. And for somebody to listen and understand them makes them feel appreciated more than just looking out the windshield and paying attention to all these other things that are going on around them. So that's my analog spiel. But yes, AI helps get them to the front door and keeping them in house before they exit the back door. You
Yeah.
can use tools to get there.
I agree with you completely. I think AI is not to the point where it's going to be able to interview people. That's not, nor would I want it to, frankly.
Mhm.
I think we are already in a place where we are lacking human connection. And so to then have that taken away from something as personal to people as their employment and connecting in a culture, company values. Like we have to have interaction to know. And to your point, people that are away overnight, 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month, time away from their friends, their family, things like that, takes a certain kind of person. And
Absolutely.
you really have to talk with that person and really figure out, like, is this going to be a best fit for this person from a psychological standpoint, an emotional standpoint, mental health? Are they, there's something and you as a professional in this industry know what to look for in those types of scenarios. And so I don't know that AI would be able to flag out people. I mean, I think for pre-screening, sure, totally. Use it for pre-screening questions, use it for video interviews, like that initial interview, maybe a pre-screening type of a scenario, fine. But if you're getting into the serious brass tacks of like interviewing someone for a position, it better be face to face or it better be face to face or Zoom or however you're going to do it. But where I see it making a difference is where you were saying in like the segmentation tools to flag at-risk drivers for, engagement, um, satisfaction signals, turn prediction, um, analytics to forecast retention, right? Career mapping, those kinds of things. I think AI is really important for because we can't always be in every place at once, especially when they're on like drivers are on the road. Um, we do have to sometimes use data to predict some of these things or to help us with maybe if they're not communicating with us, well, are they participating in other ways? How are we, looking at this data? That then it becomes important. So you're right. But I think when recruiting meets tech, there is a marriage there if it's done correctly, but we still have to have that human element. Um, we just have to aim it at the stuff we hate doing, which is like applicant screening, right? Or like pre-screening questions, stuff that can take people out. Like if you're trying to hire for a position that you want people that are okay with being home, away from home, every other month, and the person on their pre-screening question says, no, I want to be home every other day, clearly they're not a fit for the job, right?
Exactly. It's not
So,
what they were looking for, so they don't match
right.
or align. It's kind of like a
That's where
dating app.
AI,
It,
yeah,
it,
that's where AI swipes. Yeah,
it swipes them left instead of
right,
right.
right. That's where AI becomes helpful, right? Where you can say, like, okay, I can screen this person out. But yeah, you aim it at the stuff you don't want to do. The stuff that's like, if you're getting 500 applicants, one human being is going to have a hard time getting through all those people without some sort of help, right? So, yeah, I think that's a great way to put it
Yeah,
is
and a
before and
good
after.
example of that, we had not too long, a couple weeks ago, we had about 60 positions, 30 drivers and 30 driver helpers, and it was a unique industry field. Is actually working in and out of everything we're talking about AI, it was actually installing and moving equipment to AI data centers.
Yeah,
So they were looking for truck drivers that had good work history, clean employment, because you're actually going to somewhere that's pretty sensitive in data. Imagine
sure.
that. And then they're looking for helpers that have been able to touch freight, work in warehouses, and things like that. There was three locations that they needed us to fill, and we had almost 4,200 people come in and apply. And I'm like, there's no way we have time to go through all this. So here's the AI tool and what it did. We downloaded the resumes. We dropped for the driver helpers. We downloaded all the driver applications. We shoved it in there and says, all right, give me the top 100 out of each category that should be talking to based on years of experience, all sorts of questions that were put in there that didn't have any tickets or moving violations, all this sort of thing. And it spit
Right,
out those people. And then we just had conversations with those 100 people. And then out of that, based on our conversation, if they felt it was a fit or we felt it was a fit, then we moved on and submitted them to the client. And the client was kind of shocked that we were able, one, turn it around that quick. Two, they were shocked that the quality of candidates and clients that came in, and it made their hiring process a little easier because they weren't coming back. No, we don't want this. We don't want this. We were able
right,
to screen for it very quickly versus looking at 4,000 people one page at a time and ciphering or
right.
having 4,000 conversations to get to the next step.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not feasible to do that, right? So you have to have some way to get through that. It's perfect
Yep.
example of it. Yeah. So we have a spot in this particular show that's a little different than our other two that we do, where we have some just three questions from people that have given us some questions for you. And so I'm going to just ask these questions, have you answer them. The first one was, what's one thing small fleets often get wrong with safety data? It's a good question.
Oh, small fleets get wrong with safety data is they're not looking at it. They're
Mm,
not paying attention to it. The challenge with small fleets is they are the owner. Sometimes they're the mechanic. Sometimes they're their backup driver, and they're doing the best they can with being that one person. So they don't ever think about, let me go check my safety record. How was my last inspection that my driver went through? Did I get dinged for anything? Did the driver get dinged for anything? Doing taking care of the mandatory information as far as is my driver getting drug tested once a year? Have
right,
they have you reported it to the clearinghouse? Are you checking that driver to make sure? And this has happened recently. The driver went to interview for employment somewhere else, did not tell his current employer, and he went and took a drug test and failed. Well,
oh no,
in the DOT world, when you fail a DOT drug
it's
test,
logged.
it gets logged and your license is now you lose your CDL status. And he's running up and down the interstate with a maybe still has the CDL in hand, but in the system he no longer has one because he failed that drug test and his current employer didn't know this. Um, and where's the driver at? He's 400 miles away. And when he finally decides to check, so what do? You tell the driver, stop, get out the truck, don't touch the wheel. And then you've got to go recover that truck and that driver because if you get stopped by DOT, that's a hefty fine. and it goes against your DOT scoring and it puts you in a negative light with these insurance companies. So having somebody to check or tell you what you should be checking for is very helpful. Having that checklist, because there are a lot of hats. He's got to be the HR payroll person, or she's got to be the payroll person. A lot of hats in small fleets. These bigger fleets, they can afford to hire somebody to do all these particular jobs. But when
Sure.
you're a one truck, two truck, 10 truck operation, you're wearing the hats of everybody. So that's where we can kind of help guide them in that right direction and educate them on what to be looking for so they can stay in business and not get priced out of business due to cost of insurance.
Sounds like something AI can help them with too.
Absolutely.
Easy way to look at all of their data in one, if that's one person wearing all the hats, which is always challenging enough as it is, this is kind of maybe a place where AI can help maybe automate some of that. Make it a little, maybe email it to the person, right? Automated email, like here's your daily report of what's going on, right?
Exactly.
Um, so here's the second one. Which insurance trends for 2026 are proving most sticky right now or most challenging?
Oh, safety trends.
Or
It,
insurance trends, insurance.
yeah, for insurance trends, it's coming down and looking at all the risk factors for any trucking company. They're using AI tools.
Yeah,
And when you talk about insurance changing, the best way I can explain insurance is it looks at the broad mass of people as a whole. They're not picking on you. They're looking at everybody in your group factor, your as a mass group, whether it's trucking, they look at all these little pinpoints, age, year of truck, year, make, and model. They even could factor down to, all right, this is a not an American made truck, or the parts are coming from overseas. They're factoring in that that part's going to cost more to replace.
right.
Those are trends that they're using right now, and insurance is like gas prices. They will change and fluctuate daily, and insurance companies are using these AI tools to make quicker, rapid decisions so they can price insurance, one, to be competitive and to be fair in the broad market if they're looking at people in the same industry, same type thing out of Atlanta, Georgia versus Salt Lake City, Utah, or
Right.
Denver, Colorado. So they're looking at all these factors. So that's where the sticking points are coming in lately, is that they're able to do it a lot quicker. I can quote a policy in the morning, and by afternoon, it could change a couple dollars or a couple thousand, depending on what's happened in that area.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yes,
That I did not know it was that dynamic in such a short
it's
amount.
very dynamic. Every time you drive by a gas pump, you drove by it this morning, it was $3 a gallon. At lunchtime, it's 3.05. At, at dinner time, it's a whole different price. It's never constant, and that's the way insurance is. It's never. It's not like going to the store and you know that vacuum cleaner is going to be $205 for the next week because it's on sale. It's very
Right.
dynamic and changes daily, if not by the hour.
Holy moly. Well, yeah, it's like that's what we said at the beginning of this conversation. Like that's what it's a moving target. But I guess I didn't realize it moved that fast. It's
It
crazy.
moves. It's moving much faster now than I've seen it move.
Yeah, clearly. So last question for this little lightning round. If you had to pick one technology every fleet should adopt in 2026, what would it be and why?
I think every fleet should have those AI um, type cameras, AI sensors to help drivers.
Yeah,
Um, it saves lives. The cameras on the front of the trucks, a lot of old school drivers can't stand them. They don't want Big Brother or whatever you call it, but I've seen it firsthand where that camera in the front of the truck has saved somebody from going bankrupt.
yeah.
Um, a car pulled out in front of them. It was another driver's fault, and the police officer shows up, and now it's he said, she said, they said, she said, everybody said. That camera is your evidence of what happened in real time. I'm a believer in it. I even have one in my own personal vehicle because I never want to be put in that situation to where I'm doing, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. And now it's about he said, she said type situation or whatever the case is. I can give that footage to the police officer. They can review it and say, you're absolutely right. You were right. You did not pull it from this person. You did not cause this accident. And now I've reduced my cost for insurance or reduced my cost for liability risk or lawsuits. And there's plenty of lawyers out there looking to make a dime off somebody. And
Yeah.
I they're not going to make a dime off me if I can help it. And that's what I tell these carriers. Put it in there. It costs you very little money, but it will save you thousands, if not millions of dollars, and it won't bankrupt you if you are in fact in the right.
Well, and forgive me if you said this and maybe you did and I missed it, but I would imagine that if you invest in technology like that, it would, and maybe I'm totally wrong about this, but I would imagine that if you have technology like that in your trucks, that your insurance would come down slightly,
It
wouldn't it?
does.
It does, wouldn't
It
it?
does. These newer vehicles, they have the signals on the side. Daylight
Yeah,
running lights used to be the thing.
right.
It helps. They have these lane departure sensors where you swerving off to the. In my wife's vehicle, it has it. My
Yeah,
truck
yeah.
doesn't have, but you're kind of scooting off to the right, and you get the vibration in the steering wheel. I mean, there's all sorts of things. If you have that, that helps with your rates, as far as giving you discounts and things like that by having those features in there. The backup cameras. I mean, there's so you're not running over something and it causes you extra money that you have to pay out of pocket or file an insurance claim. I mean,
Right.
there's a ton of things that technology helps you for. One thing is for me, cameras. Put the cameras outward facing. It'll help you in the long run. I've seen it. I've seen videos from trucking companies where it saved their driver, it saved them from being sued, and it
Yeah.
saved them a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to have them unless there was some reason you wouldn't want to have them. But I can't imagine the benefits would far outweigh the positives in
Absolutely.
having the technology there to help in all aspects. You know, and if it doesn't fit what you need it to do, don't use it for that
Exactly.
one thing,
Well, here's the
you
thing
know?
about cameras and
And I'm
trucks.
not talking about cameras. I'm
It's
talking about like if you don't need AI to do one thing for you, don't have it do that one thing. But like the cameras to me seem like the obvious thing that probably everybody should have.
well, they do have them and they use them. You go to social media, they have no problem recording every blooper and blunder and
That's true.
circumstance that happens in the world. So why not
Prosterity's
just,
sake. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you do
Yeah.
it for self gratification. Why just do it for safety?
Very true. Good point. Well, I really appreciate you doing this with us today and being a part of the I Want to Work for You podcast. This has been awesome. A lot of great information for trucking owners, fleet owners, also drivers, and in return, retention and recruiting, also insurance. Really excited. We have a series of obviously roundtables coming up with you
Yes,
that we are really excited about. So there's a series of three, right? We have the first one on the 20th, which is next week, from 10 to 11:30 Mountain Time. So that's 12 to 1:30 Eastern Time. And then we have another one on the 4th of February, same time, 10 to 11:30 Mountain Time. So that's 12 to 1:30 Eastern. And then we have the third in the series on the 18th of February, same time again. It's at 10 to 11:30 Mountain, so that's 12 to 1:30 Eastern. All of the information is on my LinkedIn as well as Merle's. And we have the links and everything there. If you also need them, you can DM me or Merle on LinkedIn. You can find us there. And so, yeah, you also have your website. Why don't you tell everybody what your website is if they want to go there to reach you at what is it, ATG
it's
Recruiting?
American Trucking. It's actually AmericanTruckingGroup.com, or they can call me directly, 229
Perfect.
500 5202. And I have to add to these roundtables. They're very unique. It's
Yes.
one on one. It's not one sided. You come, you bring your thoughts, your questions, your what ifs, And we just sit there and have a very open, candid conversations of what we're experiencing, other people are experiencing. And I can tell you in the transportation industry, a lot of times you get tunnel vision, just seeing what your company's doing and doing only. It's kind of nice to hear from other people in the same industry of different thoughts, processes, mindsets. I know for me on the recruiting side, I get to see the secret sauces of many companies, but that one company that's out there hiring, they only get to see their secret sauce. They don't get to see what everybody else is doing and how they can
Right.
be better at what they're doing. So
Yeah.
come join and collaborate. It's very fun and it's open. It's not one sided.
Yeah, and they're totally free, open to the community. We're doing the first one, I think, is on retention meets AI, which is cool. The second one is on the tech savvy trucker, and the third is smart risk for owners, which is the insurance, retention, and AI. So they all have retention and AI and insurance tech themes to them. Yeah, totally open to the community, free to attend. And yeah, come and join us. Yeah, it's a resource to the community more than anything. And we want everybody to just be able to ask questions, right? That's the whole goal.
Absolutely.
Open dialogue. So if you feel like you can't ask these questions in your organization, that's usually where we find kind of a safe space for people to be able to ask these questions. Because sometimes you feel like, well, I can't ask these in front of my boss, but I might have this question. So this is the space to do that. And yeah, we're really excited to kick these off starting next week. So thank you again for being here. Again,
You're
just like
welcome.
every one of these podcasts, they're a resource to the community. Reach out to us. If we don't have the answer, we probably know someone that does, but likely we do because, you know, that's what we're here for. So
That's
thanks
right.
again, Merle. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you
Absolutely.
soon.
Appreciate it.
Have a
All right.
great
Take
rest of
care.
your
We'll see you
day.
soon.
Take
You
care.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
You know what I love about conversations like this? Merrill isn't just talking about technology and trends, he's talking about people, about drivers who spend weeks away from home and need that human connection, about small fleet owners wearing 10 different hats who need practical solutions, not more complexity. The trucking industry is at this incredible inflection point where technology can either divide us or bring us together. And leaders like Merrill are showing us how to use AI and telematics to make drivers safer, companies more profitable, and the whole industry more sustainable. Speaking of community, don't miss those roundtables starting soon. February 4th is the Tech Savvy Trucker, and February 18th is Smart Risk for Owners. All free, all focused on real solutions you can implement. Connect with Merrill at AmericanTruckingGroup.com, and remember, if we don't have the answer to your question, we probably know someone who does. That's what this podcast is all about, creating resources for the community. Thanks for listening to I Want to Work for You. Drive safe out there.